Hello everyone, quick little midweek video from the garage this week. I wanted to talk about some DIY tools that I never thought that I would own, but that I have ended up absolutely loving. Now I'm not talking about like basic hand tools or basic power tools like drills, jigsaws, circular saws. Those are things that all of my homeowner friends have in their garages. My dad has in his garage, my grandfathers had in their garages. What I'm talking about is more specialized tools that most people don't have, that I never thought I would end up owning, but that have proven to be so useful in DIY projects. Now I called this my top 5, but I really struggled to put them in any sort of order that was like from least favorite to most favorite or whatever. Each of these tools is my favorite tool when I'm using it. So instead, I'm just going to put them in alphabetical order. And we're going to start right here with the drill press. Probably like most guys my age, when I was in middle school, I did a semester of shop class, and there we got to use all kinds of big tools like band saws and a big drill press that was on a stand. Those are things that I never thought that I would ever actually own. And for most of my adult life, when I needed to drill holes, I just used either a cordless or a corded drill of some sort. And I don't even remember which project I was working on when I finally realized that I needed the precision of a drill press. Now I got this from Harbor Freight. It was on sale. It was, I don't remember, $70, $80. Sometimes you can find them on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace for 40, 50 bucks. It's still just drilling hole in things, but it is incredible the difference it makes when you can hold something in place or clamp it down and very precisely bring the drill bit down into the material without anything being able to move. Especially drilling metal using a hand drill, even if you like try and tap and make some sort of indentation for your drill bit to follow, man, at least me, I always struggled to keep the drill bit from wandering around or keeping it where I wanted it to go. Being able to put down a perfect row of perfectly spaced holes in exactly the right spot has brought a level of precision to my DIY projects that some of them would have simply not been possible for me to put together without the precision of a drill press. I've lost count of how many projects I've used this on, both working on my overland rig and around the house, working on metal, working on wood. I think I've even used it on some other unconventional materials that I needed to drill holes through. Just absolutely love this thing. Now next on my list is actually a fairly common power tool that most people actually probably do have in the garage, and I'm talking about a grinder. But what I think most people don't have, and what certainly my friends and my father and my grandfathers didn't have, was 4 of them. And when I first got into welding and metal projects in general a few years ago, I already owned an angle grinder. I've had this Black & Decker for most of my adult life actually, and it just keeps going strong. But when I first started welding, I would constantly have to stop and change the type of disc that I had on my grinder, depending on the task at hand, whether I needed to cut or clean or, grind, shape, whatever. Now you can get these inexpensive grinders at Harbor Freight for $15 to $20, and eventually I realized it just made sense to have a dedicated grinder for every single type of disc that I was using. So I've got my grinder disc on my trusty old Black & Decker, and I've got a wire brush on one, I've got a flap disc on one, and I've got a cutoff wheel on one. Now I can do all of my tasks without needing to stop and fiddle with taking a wheel off, putting a different wheel on, working on what for me are already fairly time-consuming projects when I'm out here working on a metal project. Buying 3 extra grinders, we're talking about a total of maybe $50 here. 100% worth it. This absolutely transformed how my metal projects went. Now up next is the nail gun kit. This is a little less budget than the first items that we looked at, but still you can get into one of these kits for not a huge amount of money. This thing has proven so immensely useful over the years that I would never go back to not having one of these. Now I've used this much more in various homeowner type projects, but it has proven useful as well when I'm working on the truck, especially some of the interior stuff I've done in the camper and projects along those lines. I've had this kit for probably over 15 years, still works. Came with 3 different sized nailers, and each of these will usually do a couple of different lengths of nail in different gauge. Also one that would do staples, little staples. And at times I've even just used this to tack things together because it's so easy to just hold a piece of wood and drive a nail in. Even if I still ultimately needed to reinforce it with screws or something like that, the nailer makes putting things together so fast and easy. And once you've got the compressor, then there are other additional pneumatic tools that you can buy now. I haven't really bought anything else to use with this, but it opens up a whole world of possible tools that you can also use. Up next is the least expensive item on my list, and that is the rivet gun. Now you can get these for as little as maybe $15, $20 I think I've seen. I bought one that was a step or two up at the hardware store. It was maybe $30. This turned out to be a super useful way to put together metal when I was working on an aluminum project, which I was unable to weld. And I've used this in a couple of other applications as well. Now, I will say that my rivet gun, and it wasn't the cheapest, it has failed. I thought maybe it was jammed. I took it apart and I found there's a little piece in there that's broken. And I haven't replaced it because I just haven't had a use yet. And I think when I do replace this, I'm gonna get a powered version instead of one of these that you have to sort of ratchet down to pop the rivet. You can find battery powered rivet guns. So I might look at the DeWalt version since I'm already in the DeWalt family. The other thing I might look at is the pneumatic powered rivet guns that I can run off of the compressor. Whichever style of rivet gun you get, whether it be hand powered or battery powered or pneumatic powered, really useful way to be able to put together metal in situations where you can't use nuts and bolts or you can't weld. Now, last item on my list is, of course, my welder. Now, this is something that really I never, ever thought that I would be into. Even a few years ago, if you had told me that one day I would be welding projects like the swing out bumper on the back of my truck, I would have said, no way. I always thought that welding was something that you needed to go and take a bunch of classes for. It seemed expensive and intimidating. And while it probably certainly is a good idea to take classes, it's not impossible to teach yourself how to weld. There's plenty of videos on YouTube, and you can go down to Harbor Freight and pick up a fairly inexpensive welder and get started. Now that's what I did. I started with a $170 welder from Harbor Freight. Now it did not work fantastically, but it got me into it. It helped me realize that yes, I could do it. I put together a handful of projects with that, including the front bumper on my truck. So this is really something that is accessible to anyone if you have the desire. Having the ability to put metal together in almost any way that you can imagine just opens up a whole new world in DIY projects. I would definitely say if you're looking to get into welding equipment, maximize your budget, spend as much as you can, get as good a welder as you can. I moved from the inexpensive little titanium 125 up to this welder, which I think sells for maybe around $500-600. I didn't buy this. A friend of mine left this here in my garage because he didn't need it anymore, and I've been using it ever since. This is still a fairly budget welder, but it works leaps and bounds above the first little welder that I bought. I went from someone who did not consider himself handy at all with really any of the tools in this list to teaching myself how to weld well enough to build something like that bumper on my truck. If I can do it, you can do it. If you're motivated, if you would like to learn how to weld, just go start trying. For me, there was definitely a learning curve and a lot of frustrations along the way, but as I got the hang of it, it's something that I really enjoy. It's fun, and I'm kind of excited when I have an excuse to use the welder. So those are my top 5 DIY tools I never thought I'd own, but that I absolutely love. So what about you? What are your favorite tools in your garage that you never thought that you would actually own? Or what are you thinking about getting? Let me know below. And thanks for watching.